The next album we're going to be jumping to is another Mushihime-sama album. And I just gotta say, this is the one I know least about of all Cave albums. I know the least about this, and that's because I don't own this album. As of today, I still haven't been able to get my hands on Mushihime-sama Cave Festival version 1.5 Arrange album. This is CVAS009. This is the first album that came out posthumously for Umemoto-san. It was August 26th, and I think that might be a part of why it's been so hard to find. Another reason, of course, is that the Cave online shop closed, and this, I think, was a Cave Matsuri only release.
Yes.
So it was rare from the start. It had a low print run. It's super hard to find. But basically what this is with a couple tracks accepted from, I think it's Masato Sakurai, it's basically Mushihime-sama as done and arranged by Ryu Umemoto, which makes it a very special album. And I just, from what I've heard so far, I've really enjoyed it. Now, Don, we're listening to the boss theme. What do you have to say about that?
I really like this boss theme. It definitely keeps the spirit of the original, particularly in like the synthesizers, but I really like the kind of FM style accompaniment that he adds to the track, because I think it makes it a little bit more menacing.
Yeah, you know, the grittiness, that raw cutting sound of the FM synth certainly does add a level of intensity, and I would imagine if I were fighting a boss and heard this, I would be panicking. Not bug panicking, just panicking. That was my stupid joke for the day. The track I selected, and I like pretty much every version of this, the OST, the double arrange version, this version, and one more album we'll talk about later. Like a Night of Falling Stars, which is the stage 4 theme, is like such an awesome song from Mushihime-sama. And I'll tell you, Umemoto's arrangement of this track does not disappoint at all. Because basically what you get is you get some more of that FM synth, but you also get these really lovely female voices. They're basically running around in harmonic thirds and seconds, and it's totally sublime. I just love it. And by the way, if you're wondering, like, what is this album for, I think Cave Festival version 1.5, is that an arcade version of the game only?
Yeah, it was a special PCB board that was sold only during this Matsuri in 2011 of May.
So they were selling the actual arcade board.
Yeah, and then in that one they had replaced the soundtrack with.
Wow, that's absolutely like astonishing, and it just goes to show like how serious Cave is about, I don't know, being awesome. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, you could buy like the board and install it and be like, hey, I'm playing this like arcade game. That's crazy. I hope someday they do a console port of this and reprint this album. Maybe reprint this album. It depends on whether or not I can get a hold of it first. That's selfish. Okay, moving to the tail end of 2011. So it's December 2011, and 2 albums are released. The first one we're going to look at is what is currently the last in the iPhone soundtrack series. This is Death Smiles for iPhone/iPod Touch, CVIS-0s and a 3. This album, for what it's worth, I think is beautiful. The other iPhone soundtracks they had some good moments, but not the best. For me, This Death Smiles album is, and I know Don's going to disagree, and that's fine. He has his right to. I think this is every bit as good as the Death Smiles original soundtrack. As far as what the game is, it is all the stages, all the same bosses with one exception. Jitterbug gets replaced with somebody or somebodies, and you don't play as the angels, you actually play as the princess of the kingdom, whose name is suddenly escaping me, which is weird because I've sunk like 50 hours into this game. The game's mode involves having a shop. You earn money in the stages and you can buy new items. You can find rare treasures in the harder difficulties. So this is a great one for people who like RPG elements and customization, but still really enjoy a challenging shmup. So the soundtrack is totally new. There's really no reference to the original game. And the soundtrack, and this is the most incredible thing about it for me, the soundtrack is by Takeshi Miyamoto, who is Kizakura, the Cave in-house sound team, the guy who, you know, did some music for Pink Sweets and Moochie Moochie Pork and is on the crappy Voice Bowl album. Like, his compositions didn't impress me in the past.
Well, I liked on Pink Sweets and Moochie Moochie Pork, he mainly did the boss themes, and I think those were really successful.
You're right. It is worth saying that among the Cave in-house team, Kizakura's tracks are some of the best. But for him to do a full album on his own and blow it out of the park, and what we just heard was the demo screen music, Garden of Secrets, which Don selected. And that was sublime. I mean, it was pretty, don't you think, Don?
Yeah, I think it's one of my favorite tunes on the soundtrack. It's really elegant, and it kind of still fits the whole theme of the game without really delving into that super gothic sound.
Yeah.
And I know for this soundtrack, any kind of style is on the table, which is why it's so diverse, but there's no rock featured at all on the album because they really wanted to differentiate it between the arcade version.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, having played both, even though it's the same stages and the same enemies, the same bosses, you feel different playing them. And what we're hearing now is, I think this is the best track on the album. This is Stage B1, so it's the forest music. Mad Chase Through the Forest is the track title. And again, Don's going to slap me silly. In this instance, you know, I said I think the OST is every bit as good as what Namiki did on Death Smiles. In this instance, I prefer what Takeshi Miyamoto wrote here. I think this is the superior Stage B1 to Death Smiles' Stage B1. So Don's going to crucify me now.
That was my virtual slap, if you could hear it.
Oh, yep, there it was. But I mean, listen to this. I mean, this actually sounds... a chill ambient electronic track that Namiki is also capable of writing the same style of music. I mean, listen to the Black Rock Shooter album.
Yeah, when I wrote my review for it, I didn't knock this theme at all. I thought it was extremely stunning. First of all, it's really good, and I think it would fit more in like ESP Galuda 2. It's that kind of style.
You know what? You're right. Stylistically, this, if they made an ESP Galuda 3, I think Miyamoto could do it and make it awesome. This is less mysterious, but the color tones, the green and the brown earth tones, and the type of enemies coming out are a little less of the gothic horror variety. You have, you know, it's plantoids. It's plant life that's, you know, vicious and needs to be shot down, but it's not horror or gothic per se. I think that ambient electronica with the piano lead, it works. Alright, but we've run out of time. The other album released in 2011, this is a really interesting game. This is Cave's first and may end up being their only visual novel. The game is called Instant Brain. It was originally intended when the project came to be, it was intended that Umemoto would be the lead and doing either the whole album or at least most of it. Because he did get sick and pass away, he only has 4 or 5 songs across the whole 2-disc soundtrack. So a whole bunch of other composers ended up coming in, and I'm going to name them real quick because I think it's a great list of composers. You have Keiichi Yonao, who was a member of Gann and has done a lot of really incredible music. In fact, what we're listening to right now, I think, is a Yonao composition. This is... No, I'm sorry, no, it's not. This is Tadayoshi Moriya. It's the 2nd track on the album, and Moriya is primarily a Toho Dojin guy, also known as Tainoko Bone, or Ukon. And so he's just like, he's done literally like 50 Toho albums, so he knows his shmup music, but here he is doing a Cave project for a visual novel. The soundtrack also has Teknouchi, Wasi 303, Keiichi Yonao, who I mentioned earlier, and Hideki Higuchi, who has worked in tandem with Yonao before. So, Don, why'd you select this track by Moriya?
I chose this track because I just kind of really enjoy the atmosphere that it gives off. It kind of has that mysterious, almost rainy day. I mean, it is called Rainy Run, but I mean that rainy day kind of vibe. And while I'm not the biggest fan of the soundtrack in general, I think that this is one of the stronger themes.
Yeah, and excuse me, Rainy Run is the second to last track on the first disc. It's disc 1, track 16. And for me, Instant Brain is the kind of music I really adore. It is not at all a shmup soundtrack. It is a much calmer, slower tempo, less percussion and rhythm. It has some jazz elements infused with the electronica, and this track, which is more like a classical, neoclassical like piano ballad. I love this kind of music. I absolutely cherish it. So for me, this is one of my favorite soundtracks, and God, I would love for Cave to do more projects like these. I think it's kind of unlikely with Umemoto having passed, but I certainly wouldn't mind more like this. I'll also mention real quick, we didn't cover the earlier album because it just gets fully consumed, but there was an Instant Brain pack-in soundtrack. I think it was called the Instant Brain Sound Selection. It was a single disc. The Perfect soundtrack, which we're listening to now, catalog number CVST0022, that's the full soundtrack, and it's 2 discs of music. The music you're hearing now is Challenge to the Past. This is a Yonao track, and this is, oh, I totally dig this kind of music. If you're really into visual novels and you like mystery, you like techno sci-fi kind of stuff, if you like 999, even though that soundtrack is very different, Hosoe was very compressed electronic kind of stuff there. But if you like that style of game and you like the kind of music that gets written for it, the sort of mysterious music, like if you like Jake Hunter, Saburo Jinguji, you'll like this soundtrack, and I love this kind of stuff. So we're not going to take time to listen to this one anymore. I'm just going to say you're getting a sound for it, and if you like this kind of stuff, hey, send a tweet to Cave, let him know you would like to have English visual novels, because it's not as well represented in America as it is in Japan. I mean, Japan probably has 100 for every one we have. But I really like the musical style, and I think Cave is perfectly suited. They create really interesting fantasy fictional worlds for every shmup they develop. They have great art, they have great sense of characters, especially in a game like Death Smiles or Mushihime-sama. Like, they know how to flesh out a world and make something that can draw you in. So that's what visual novels are all about. They're certainly able to make more if they wanted. But enough about that. We only have 2 more albums left that Cave has published, and then we'll get to what we call our extras, or what's Cave music published by others. First up is the last soundtrack that was available on their online shop before they closed it up. It became an instant hard to find. Cave set the price to 4,500 yen, and you will not find it for less than 6,000 anywhere. You'll more likely find it for 7,000 or 8,000, and that translates to $70 to $100. This is soundtrack for 2 games. It's Doronpachi Saidai Ojo and Doronpachi Maximum soundtracks. So disc 1 is Sai-Daiōjo and disc 2 is DDP Maximum. What you're hearing right now is the ending music, Who Decided About Dying Peacefully, from Dodonpachi Maximum. Don, tell me about, first of all, if you can give us a summary of the 2 discs, who's behind the whole project, and then tell us why you selected this track of them all.
Well, the first disc, Sai-Daiōjo, is composed entirely by Manabu Namiki, aside from like the theme song for this game. Whereas the Dodonpachi Maximum original soundtrack, which is for a Windows 7 platform, not the Windows 7, the Windows Phone.
Yep.
The Windows Phone platform only, features remixes from past games done by Wasi 303.
Yeah, I think it has Dodonpachi, it's got Daiōjo, it's got Fukatsu, is that right?
And I think even a little bit of Ketsui.
Yeah. So all of that source material is up for grabs as Wasi 303 does what I think are awesome arrangements. Now, why'd you select this song? I think anyone listening might be able to say why you selected this one, but go ahead.
I chose this song because on the original soundtrack, this was an extremely peaceful song because it served as an ending theme.
Yep.
But to kind of spruce it up for stage purposes, I like how Wasi 303 made it really fun and upbeat and danceable.
Yes, it's a very upbeat version of it, and the non-lyrical female vocals sound great against it. And rhythmically, he's doing a lot of breaks and stops and syncopation. I mentioned earlier, I had been a little critical of Wasi 303 on Muchi Muchi Pork W. This style and what Wasi 303 has done on the Maximum disc, I think, is just absolutely phenomenal. And I'll just mention as a very quick aside, there is like a free digital release. It was 6 tracks, Dodonpachi Maximum 2.02, that has more Wasi 303. If anyone's interested, you probably have to go to VGMDB to find the link at this point. It's become hard to find, but it's free, and I think the servers are still up to download the file.
Actually, I just want to correct myself. That was still used as the ending theme for Dodonpachi Maximum, but I guess to fit with the style of his other arrangements, he just made it much more upbeat.
Now, the track I've selected is Niji, Stage 2 from Dodonpachi Sai-Daiōjo. And Sai-Daiōjo is a true sequel. I don't know how one would translate Sai-Daiōjo. Daiōjo is translated as blissful death, and then Daifukatsu is resurrection. So is Sai-Daiōjo like dying again? I mean, I think Sai-Daiōjo translates to like maximum death. Like full-on entire death or something. But in any case, Sai-Daiōjo serves as the next step in the series, and man, does this soundtrack deliver. I think this Stage 2 theme is awesome. I love all the stage themes here. Don, do you think this holds up alongside Daiōjo and Daifukatsu?
The overall soundtrack? Or...
Yeah.
I really enjoy this one. It definitely has a much more, I would say, pop appeal to it.
Yes, it's more
appeal,
it's more
But
smooth.
I also think that is due to color scheme and how, like, even the character, like the pilots themselves. It's definitely much more... What's the word? It has more of a sex appeal kind of style.
Yes, this is a sexy game with sexy music. That is certainly a fair assessment. I'll also add, if you are able to get your hands on this 2-disc soundtrack, it comes with an outer display case, and the jewel case has the discs, and then like 50-page art book is in there too, and it's awesome. Lots of fantastic character art, sketches, full color. So if you're into artwork, obviously there are great cave art books out there as well, but this and the Mushihime-sama Futari art books that come, with their respective soundtracks are really great add-ons, and just an example of Cave sort of going above and beyond to please their fans. Now, unfortunately, I don't know if this is part of the financial woes that hit them, but I wonder if them splurging like that is part of why they had to close the online shop. I don't have a lot of insight there. Do you, Don?
I'm not quite sure either, but one of the things that I'm just curious about is because this soundtrack, they don't fade. They kind of just like hard cut.
That is true, yeah.
So I'm not sure if there's just not enough time to like kind of master it for a CD like properly or what, but
right, like you could see like the resource constraints falling, because like that lack of polish would be, that doesn't follow suit with the rest of their releases where they do take that time and care. Though we did also mention that compression problem earlier.
Yeah.
So that it does happen, but yeah, you gotta wonder what's happening with them as a company. All right, and we're now reaching the last album to date. After this video series is published, there definitely will be another Cave album packed in with the 360 version of Saidai Ojo, or is it Maximum, or is it both?
I think it's just Saidai Ojo.
Okay. And that's planned for, I think, a May 2013 release. They also just announced that 10 of the albums we mentioned here are going to be in a box set collection of sorts. Details on that aren't quite hammered out as of the time of this recording.
But it seems to be like a pack-in. Oh, it's a pack-in to like the shooting collection that's being released for Xbox 360. They're releasing a whole bunch of games. Right,
so you get the 10 games, you get the 10 soundtracks, and it's a 30,000 yen deal, which is like $350. Depends on what the yen's at. Anyway, we've been listening to the last album they've published to date, and that was almost a year ago in May of 2012. This was a pack-in Mushihime-sama. Which Mushihime-sama? It was another 360, right?
It was the first game.
First game on 360. So this is the special arrange album. So again, like how many arrangements do we have in Mushihime-sama now? Like 4, I guess. It's a lot. So this is CVAS 010, most recent publication. This has Base Escape and X Base Escape. It's Namiki and friends doing some pretty cool arrangements. What you've been hearing is Direction to the Heart of the Forest. It's the Stage 5 theme, as arranged by Yoshimi Kudo, and this is Don's pick. Don, talk to us about it.
I just kind of really enjoy this, like, I don't know how to describe it, I guess, easily, but I kind of like how he takes the original, which was definitely very organic, and he transforms it into this much more upbeat and groovy sort of, that I just like everything about it. It's kind of like these groovy, like, breakdowns where you don't really hear the melody at all. There's sections that sound definitely more, I would say, Enya-like, but much, much better sounding, because they're upbeat and they're not all new agey. Yeah. And then of course there's the brand new like synthesized portion of the melody that just to me is like superb.
Yeah, the melody I think is carried by I guess that would be like the shakuhachi flute or whatever it's called, or some kind of recorder. It's got a sort of ethnic Asian distinct vibe to it, very nice. And then there's the little girls singing here and there. And I don't know if that was recorded or if that was a Vocaloid thing, but it sounds really good. I'm going to back out a bit so people can hear a bit of it. Yeah, so this is a very dynamic arrangement, and I think it works really well, and I'm sure it serves the game very well. I haven't played the 360 version, but I imagine it works beautifully with the game. I'll also mention it's fairly lengthy. This is a 6-minute track, and we do have some lengthy arrangements here, which I think is to be appreciated by fans of the OST. All right, now the final track before we get to the extras. I chose the stage select music, and I only chose it because we hadn't reached it yet, and this is an iconic track. This version is arranged by Kimihiro Abe, who is just one of my favorite human beings in the world. I mentioned that earlier. I think he's underappreciated by game music fans, and I really like what he did here. Stage select theme, of course, is called The Princess Age 15, and you're hearing that violin part right now, and that really cool, weird synth. Let's hear it. Yeah, that. And then it cuts right back in, and just absolutely, it's everything I like about what Abe and the other Bass Escape or ex-Bass Escape people do. It's just catchy, it's dancey, it's fun, it's unexpected, it's refreshing, which we've seen so often, especially in Bass Escape arrange albums. And I just think Mushihime-sama, you know, we got to hear a lot of other people do arrangements, but we did not ever hear Bass Escape go on top of Bass Escape. And, you know, this is them revisiting the soundtrack basically a decade later. Well, not a whole decade, but pretty close. And I think they did a really good job with this album, and I just love popping this disc in, and this is the first thing you hear. It gets me excited. So Don, are you ready to switch it up and do the extras?
I am.
All right, let's do it.